Hey, storytellers. Mary Rose here. It's so nice to see you all. I am delighted to be going live with you on a Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific time. And if you're watching on Facebook, do your little thing that you've got to do. Go to streamyard.com/Facebook and give permission to show your name so that when you leave a comment, as a bunch of you already are, I will know who is here. And let's see who is here. Oh, let's see. Anne, hello. It's so nice to see you here. Hillary, a pleasure to see you. Erin, it's great to see you here. You're all saying hi to each other. Isn't it great? We've got a bunch of regulars who come. We're on this journey together, learning to be better writers. It never ends, you know. I mean, as you can tell, I'm fascinated and will be eternally fascinated by what makes good writing good. And that to me is a very deep question. It's not just a career related question. It has to do with the wanting to understand something about myself, right? And how I react to art and why it's been such a compelling practice for me my whole life long. Maybe some of you can relate to that. Hey, Kelly, it's so great to see you. What a pleasure. What a pleasure. Thank you all for participating live. I love it when you come live. But if you're watching the replay, I love that you're watching the replay. That's good too. And if you've got questions or comments about what you see in the replay, there's a comment section below. Please use it. I get notified when people leave comments, and I will come back and answer your questions and engage in a dialogue with you as well. So all are welcome. Tracy, welcome. Tracy's here live for the first time. Love to have you here, Tracy. Terrific. Now, listen, today I'm going to start by saying something a little provocative, which, as you know, I'm not shy about doing most of the time. Writers, am I right, always find something to complain about. I can say that because I'm one of you, you're one of me. We are all in this together. Writers always have something to complain about. And today I want to talk about two complaints that seem like the opposite complaint, and yet we could all make those complaints at different times in our writing journeys. And the two complaints are this. One is that I'm out of ideas. I don't have any ideas. I'm afraid I won't have any ideas. I'm intimidated by the blank page. I just don't know how to think of things. That's what I call like the blank page problem. The other set of complaints is that I have too many ideas. I sit down to work and I'm overwhelmed with impulses, and I think maybe my character could be like this, or maybe she could be like that. Maybe this should happen. Maybe that should happen. Maybe I'll write in the first person. Maybe I should write in the third person. I don't know. I have so many impulses. I'm overwhelmed. So the opposite of the blank page problem, let's call it the creative overwhelm problem. They seem like opposites, right? And yet I think we all have moments that we can hear ourselves participating in one set of complaints or the opposite set of complaints. It's perfectly normal, but it's also exhausting, and it can hold us back. And so that's what I want to talk about today. The blank page problem, the creative overwhelm problem, which is worse, which is easier to fix. Are they fixable? This is what we're going to talk about today. So I hope you are on board for that discussion. And as always, I'm going to love it if you share in the comments your own thoughts and experiences about either one or both of these problems. So before we go on, let me introduce myself to those of you who might be new to this live stream, watching on the replay, new to the channel. My name is Mary Rose Wood. I am an author. I teach from my own writing practice, and that, I think is important. And I encourage anybody out there who's seeking advice or mentorship or training having to do with writing to focus on teachers who actually have written books. Now, this seems, a little sassy, but I am continually amazed at how many people teach writing without really having the experience of having written very much, if anything. That's just a little caveat. So I'm best known for writing middle grade fiction. My most recent book is behind me on the shelf, Alice's Farmer Rabbit's Tale. I want to say it's my 14th published novel, all published by the big 5 publishers. So I've been doing this for a while. And I want you to know that the stuff that I'm telling you is not stuff that I read in books. It's, the hard-earned wisdom of someone who's been in the trenches for a while. So I welcome dialogue and I welcome your questions, because this is coming from experience. I'm also, in addition to my own writing practice, I'm the founder of Path of the Storyteller, and I invite you to come on over and join that mailing list at pathofthestoryteller.com. It's a program and community that I created to train and mentor writers who are serious about leveling up. They want to write well. They might long to get published. They might be early in careers. They might be even mid-career and wanting to, do better. And it's not always easy to get clear explanations and answers about how to level up our writing. It's not always easy to do. I know that some of you know that to be the case. It's hard to get feedback we can trust. It's hard to get guidance we can actually put to use in our own work. So that's what Path of the Storyteller is all about. And I really do welcome you into that community. All right, let's get started. We can call this the Goldilocks problem, right? You all know the story of Goldilocks. Like, it's too hot, it's too cold, it's just right. Which is it? Do we have not enough ideas or too many ideas? All right, so we're starting now with comparing the blank page problem with the creative overwhelm problem. Now, before we finish, I definitely want to guide you away from the bad solutions that writers intuitively come up with to both of these problems and toward better solutions. Before we get to the solutions, let's really define the experience of being stuck in one of these out of balance situations. That's the best way to describe it, right? We're out of balance with our writing practice when we've swung to one of these extremes or the other. So let's start with the blank page problem. Now, those of you who've studied with me or who've watched the live streams might know that I occasionally poo-poo writer's block as a thing. I kind of don't believe in it. Now, you may say, well, Mary Rose, that's because it's never happened to you. I've been writing a long time, and I've been in a lot of, moods about writing. I've had a lot of experiences with my own writing. I know what it's like when it's going smoothly. I know what it's like when it feels like molasses. I know what it's like when you're rushing to meet a deadline. I know what it's like when it's hard to get to work. That's why I just wanted to frame this, that I feel all your pain. Whatever pain you feel about writing, I've been there. I feel it. I'm with you. I'm on your side. But this idea of a writer's block, that the blank page is something that has a kind of a power over us, I just want to dismantle it right away. Because when writers say that they don't have any ideas, I don't know what to write about. I don't have an idea for a story. I have an idea for a story, but I get to the bottom of page 1 and I don't know what happens. Like all of the things that get described as writer's block, or I don't have any ideas. Like, what is going on in the head of that writer? Because if I sat across the table and had lunch with that writer, it's not like they couldn't carry on a conversation, is it? I mean, they would have tons to say. I would engage them in conversation. They would engage me in conversation. We would share stories about our past. We would talk about what's going on in our lives. We would share our hopes and dreams. We might look at fellow diners and make comical observations. That's always a fun thing to do when you're out in a restaurant. And so it's not that there's a block. It's not that the language is not there. It's not that the engagement with the human condition is not there. It's just that writer has created a kind of a vision about what's supposed to happen when we take the natural, ceaseless, creative chatter that's going on inside our brains, and we put our fingers on a keyboard and try to channel it onto a page, whether we do that, manually or digitally, is a personal choice, there is some research that writing with pen on paper is actually helpful to many people, that some people do better with that. And you can play around with your practice. You can play around with it. Whether you are used to just writing straight to the keyboard or whether you like to write things out by hand first, it's up to you. But the point is the same. Once we take what's out of our head, out of our mouths, and try to put it now into this conversion into written language, something happens. So the block is not mental. The block is not spiritual. The block is not creative. There's something that happens when we decide, now I'm going to write. It has to do with our idea of writing. What do we believe about writing? That's holding this current of language, this endless stream of observations, memories, dreams, wishes from coming out into words. I'm curious. I'm going to keep an eye on the comments if anybody has a thought in reaction to that. And I'll wave hi to Nancy, who says hello and just arrived. So glad you're here, Nancy. Let's think about this idea. And if, just in case anybody is out there saying, well, no, it's blank inside my head. It's not just when I sit to write it. It's just blank inside my head. I don't believe you. I defy you to go blank inside your head. If I invited you to sit down at a meditation retreat and we're going to sit here, we're going to take deep breaths and we're going to, just close our eyes and try to go blank, you can't do it. Nobody can do it. Even experienced meditators can't do it. This is like a mistaken belief about meditation, that it has to do with going blank. It doesn't have to do with going blank. It has to do with getting a little space between who you are, your true self, and the chatter that goes on in your head unbidden. Getting a little objectivity, being a little amused by it, perhaps, being a little forgiving of it, not believing it to be true, just recognizing it for what it is, the ceaseless chatter. But the thing is, we could just write down our ceaseless chatter and say, hey, there's the 1,000 words. Look what I wrote today. We could do it unless we have built a kind of a citadel of rigid ideas about what deserves to be called writing. I'm just going to drop that for a second. What deserves to be called writing? Does it have to make sense? Does it have to have good grammar? Does it have to pour out of us sequentially as if we were taking dictation of a book that's already written? See, that's a big one. And I come across it again and again and again with writers, even writers who know better. They know better. I mean, if I really push them, they're like, yes, I know. I'm just writing a draft. I'm exploring, blah, blah, blah. But the truth is, the wish, the secret expectation is that they're going to sit down to work, and what's going to come out is going to come out from left to right, from top to bottom, in a sequence of completely conceived sentences telling a story that makes sense. That's what finished books are like. If you go to your bookshelves and you take a finished book off the bookshelf, that's what it's like. It starts at the beginning. It's divided into chapters. It's got paragraphs. There's a main character. It's got some kind of story that it's telling. Fantastic. Wonderful. That's what finished books are like. What comes out of us when we are actually working bears very little resemblance to that. And all I can ask you to do is believe me about this. And the more that you hold on to, it's an interesting question, isn't it? Like, why do we hold on to this almost childlike fantasy that finished books will pour out of our fingertips? I don't know. And I would love for you to offer your theories about that. Why do we want to believe that? Why do we insist on believing it, even when people tell us again and again it's not so? Now, If you believe that, consciously or unconsciously, when you sit down to work, what is available to you to come out onto the page is going to feel like gibberish. It's just going to feel aimless. It's not going to feel like writing, my big air quotes. It's not going to feel like writing. And so instead of accepting what you really have available to you to put on the page, you sit there saying, I don't know what to write. My head is filled with language. A lot of the chatter inside my head right now is anxious and accusing me of not being talented and not being creative because I don't know what to write. But it's not that I don't know what to write because I'm blank. It's I don't know what to write because there's so much language in my head telling me that I don't know what I'm doing. Well, write that. Like that could be good. You could just put that down on paper. Then you'll have 2,000 words. Look what you've written today. 2,000 words about how hard writing is. It doesn't matter. Get it out on the page. So this is a long way of saying I actually don't believe in writer's block, but I do believe that it's extremely common for writers to hold good writing in such reverence that they absolutely convince themselves that they're supposed to put stuff on the page in their most early explorations that makes sense, that has some virtue as fiction, that even looks and sounds and smells like fiction. It doesn't. That's not how we begin. So that's a problem. Here's another reason that a blank page problem exists is that the writer in question has another mistaken belief, in my opinion, that creativity arrives in a special bubble, like that writing that's worthy of being called writing arrives like Glinda the Good Witch and the Wizard of Oz. Like it just arrives in a special bubble called intuition or creative impulse or inspiration. And that instead of dealing with the messy language that's available to them, the unformed ideas that are available to them, like all the stuff that's actually in their heads, they just sit there saying, well, if I know I'm a creative person, I trust my intuition, I'm just going to sit here and wait for the bubble to arrive. And they wait for the bubble and they wait for the bubble and the bubble never comes. And so they might say, well, I wasn't feeling it today. I just didn't have any intuitions today. But they accept that. They accept that because they believe so hard in this sort of precious bubble of creative revelation that they think that that's what they're supposed to be waiting for. Meantime, there's like words and ideas and stuff surrounding them, like pulling on their sleeves, right? Begging for their attention. They're like, shush, 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 shush. I'm waiting for my bubble to come. And inside my bubble is what? My bubble has got finished sentences and, important ideas, and this is what I'm really here waiting for. So they literally miss it. They miss the writing experience, waiting for inspiration to strike. Now, what happens to the writer with a blank page problem if they continue to just sort of hold on to the rigid idea of yeah, my head is full of stuff, but it's not worthy of being called writing, so I'm stuck. I'm blank. I got nothing. They can then have a bad solution to it, and the bad solution is to start calling themselves names, right? Just calling themselves names, like, oh, I'm not talented. I'm not. I don't have it. I don't have the gift, right? And getting very negative about it. Sometimes they will then quit, but often they will just take their frustration from workshop to workshop or class to class, teacher to teacher. They're just frustrated and they just are just holding on to this idea about what writing is actually like. That's just not helpful. But sometimes they will quit. So these are terrible solutions. It's unhappy. You call yourselves names. Eventually you quit. It's frustrating. That's a bad solution. It doesn't solve anything. And the other bad solution, of course, is to build a temple to your bubble of intuition. To say, well, my bubble is very rare and it only shows up occasionally. And that's why it's so special. And that's what my creative impulse is all about. and I revere it, and I wait for inspiration to strike, and when it does, it's incredible. And they get very enamored of the idea that writing is like magic and inspiration has to come, and they really build, like, a, as I say, like a temple to this idea. I just want to point out to you that both of these bad solutions to the blank page problem are based on ego. And one of them is like, things are not working, so therefore I'm going to put myself down. And the other one is, things are not working, therefore I'm going to build myself up. But they're both ego problems. So I invite you to just drop them, to just try to drop them. Um, the the underlying causes of them, and I'm going to talk about this more when we get to the solutions. But the writer who has mistaken ideas about what writing is not realistically relying enough on the actual craft of writing. They're just not relying on it enough. They're not willing to replace their uninformed idea of what writing's supposed to be with some actual practical knowledge about, no, this is how writing actually works. So they're not relying enough on writing craft. And I'm going to talk about that more. The writer who builds a temple to this bubble of inspiration is relying too much on intuition. So that's where the balance is off. All right, let's put blank page problem aside for just a minute. Oh, and I want to share, before we get to the creative overwhelm problem, let's take a little trip to the comments. Isn't this interesting? Really great. Nancy, this is so insightful. Nancy says, I've discovered hidden beliefs inside myself about writing should be, like it should be high flown, intellectual, etc., like having a snobby attitude about it. Surprised to see that. This is really common, Nancy. You know, definitely a very important and admirable discovery. The self-observation of looking at our beliefs about writing is so important. This is really like a writer's mindset exploration. We have these beliefs about writing that hold us back, and sometimes we ourselves don't even know where they came from. But when we start digging, when someone starts asking you provocative questions and you start digging, you can be really surprised. Yeah, this is really great. All right, so let's go to the creative overwhelm problem. And I think for some of you, this might resonate even more, because what happens when writers have enough of an awakening, they've done some training, they've been in the trenches long enough, writing, rewriting, they might be early or mid-career writers, they have a certain amount of mileage on them. So they've already maybe gotten a little bit more realistic about what writing is like, enough to actually be doing it on a consistent basis. Yay, right? Well, it brings this new problem, this creative overwhelm problem. Once you know a little bit more about how writing actually works, there is so much to consider. There's so many different things to think about. There's so many different aspects of your work to make decisions about. I want to just run through a sampling, but this doesn't scratch the surface. I sit down to work on a project. I have to decide what point of view to use. Is it third person or first person? Is it going to be predominantly a close third person? Am I going to play around with a more flexible third person that veers into omniscience sometimes? Interesting. Maybe I'll try it a little bit one way. Maybe I'll try it a little bit the other way, and just see which one works best. Okay, now I've written a chapter in third person and a chapter in first person. I like them both. Okay, now I'm really confused because I don't know which one to do. All right, that's like a big decision now, right? Because if I continue down one road and later on I choose that, discover I've chosen the wrong thing, I've got to throw everything away. The stakes feel high. Who wants to waste their writing time, their precious writing time? That's just one set of decisions. Then you might say, well, where do I start the story? I have a kind of an idea of what story I want to tell, but what should the first scene be? Like, should the first scene be, meeting the character in a normal situation and like getting to know them first and explaining the world of the book? Or, should I spend a lot of time like setting things up? Or should I choose a scene that happens a little bit later? where something really significant happens, even though we haven't had a chance to get to know the hero yet. But then I can weave in the explanations about her history and the backstory. I can sort of weave them in I'm not sure which would work best. Maybe I'll try it one way, I'll try it another way. And now I've got both versions, and now I don't know which one is better. And I've got piles of pages. And okay, and now I've got to decide, like, first person, third person, start with this scene, start with that scene. How much backstory should I even put in? How much does the reader need to know? Do they need to know everything? Do they need to know everything now? Do they will they wait to find out later? Or should I write a prologue that explains it all? Maybe I'll draw a map and we can sort of put it in the front of the book, right? You start to dig deep into your material with good intentions, with all of the tools of craft at your disposal. And all of a sudden, you've got to make 1,000 decisions before you can even write a paragraph. It feels like it might have anything to do with the book that you're writing. Who can relate? Can anybody relate out there? There are all kinds of things that can happen in this state of, like, creative overwhelm. Is, in a way, it's a kind of a gift, because you've got all this stuff coming. You might start imagining all kinds of characters. You might say, oh, I got to keep track of these characters. Let me write little biographies for all of them. I'll describe them all. I'll think about it. Then these characters start to come to life in your mind. They start wanting to have adventures of their own. You think, well, maybe that one could be a subplot. Maybe, I'm going to have to write a series because that one's going to want a companion book, right? Oh dear. What about the previous generations? Like, there's a legacy of trauma. My main characters are dealing with stuff that happened like 2 generations before. Doesn't my reader want to know that? Yes, they want to know it because I want to tell it. So maybe I'll have like multiple flashback scenes. Oh no, that's not going to be enough. I'll write like a whole version of what happened in the past, and I'll interweave like present and past. I could go on very easily riffing about the mindset of the writer and creator overwhelm, but I think you get my point. What happens is that there's such an abundance of riches, of creative impulses, that the original task, the central task of writing a draft of a book, is now buried. It's just buried. There's so many options. There's so many different directions that one could go in, that you no longer feel able to make any decision about anything. And you end up with just piles of stuff that doesn't go together. Half of it's in first person, half of it's in third person, half of it uses this viewpoint character, half of it has got that protagonist. and it's just really overwhelming. It's that, again, like, there's a lot of evidence about this, that human beings can make decisions when we have a limited range of choices. But if you give us too many options, something called decision fatigue sets in. We can no longer make a decision. We just can't even make a decision. So, what's the bad solution? The bad solution, and I say this with love, because I know that some of you are very inclined to do this, because it seems like the right thing to do. It's not like it's not a bad impulse, it's not a bad intention. It's a good intention. It's this, that you've generated so much material, you have so many ideas, that you think the solution is got to be, all right, if I can just find the right structure for this book that would accommodate all of this, I've got it, and then the quest becomes, all right, I'm going to have to map this out, because it's going to be in third person, but every third or fourth chapter is going to have to be in first person to incorporate this other point of view. Got that. All right. There's this alternate timeline that happened like 100 years ago. How am I going to put that in? All right. So maybe there's like a part 1 and a part 2. Part 2 is the previous generation, and part 3 will be like, I don't know, the future. And then I'm going to need a lot of different viewpoint characters because there's no way I'm going to get this all in from one person's point of view. And it's the Rube Goldberg machine starts to be engineered. It's the structure. You're starting to say, I have to build a structure that can hold all of it. Is this possible? Well, I've already called it a bad solution, right? I've already called it a bad solution. So you know that my take on this for you is going to be like, hold on now, writers. Cool off. Building a structure that holds all of it is not the way. That's not the golden road to happiness here. And it leads to the next bad solution, which I have seen a number of times in my life, as a mentor to writers, is that the desire to say to yourself, okay, I've got all this stuff, it's amazing. And listen, it is amazing. Let's celebrate it. You're creating lots of amazing stuff. The solution is to figure out a structure that can hold it all. So this is a 7-book series with, multiple timelines and viewpoint characters. I got this. And then that writer spends 10 years trying to accomplish a vision that's, honestly, almost certainly not going to work. And that writer pins their entire creative output on just continuing to develop this idea. And I liken this to the chicken that is designed to lay an egg every day. And they lay today's egg. And tomorrow comes and it's time to lay a new egg, but they're like, I haven't finished polishing yesterday's egg. I'm going to spend a little more time just polishing yesterday's egg. It's a great egg. I love it. It's shiny. It's egg-shaped. It's great. And then the third day comes and now they've got another egg to lay. And they're like, I didn't finish. I really am still working on yesterday's egg. Listen, a chicken is designed to lay an egg every day. You're a writer. Please do not spend too much time polishing the same egg. Now, those of you who've heard me preach about revision are saying, wait, what are you saying? You're contradicting that? No. Good writing happens in revision. What I'm talking about is something different. What I'm talking about is becoming so fixed on achieving a goal of creating this massive work that's going to include every creative idea that you have, that you miss the simple truth that you don't have to put all your ideas in one book. And that it's good to have, 10 times as many ideas as you put in a book, right? If you have, 10x may not even be enough. If your book, your finished book, has, for every idea that's in it, 20 or 50 or 100 ideas that you tried and rejected, that's the good ratio. The stuff that you chose to leave out is going to outweigh the stuff that makes it in by a large ratio. And I've heard writers complain about this. It's like, I wrote all this stuff, but half of it isn't even making it into the book. I'm like, half? Wow, that's so efficient. So again, some ideas about how process works that are not realistic might be things we need to attend to. So the bad solutions for the creative overwhelm problem are to think that the job now is not to decide what to leave out, but to just try to build a really complicated structure that includes it all, and to then justify spending a lot of time trying to execute that project when you could and should be developing as a writer by writing another book and another book and another book. Okay, now let's get to the good solutions. Before I start with good solutions, I'm just going to cast my eye over on the comments again. Let's see. Anne, I'm going to bring this up for everyone to see. So Anne shares, maybe we see our overwhelm of ideas as a sign that we have strengths in the imagination and ideation realm. Yes, positive reframing, Anne, 100%. And the shadow side is that we have, it looks like that the shadow side is a sign that we have a strength. It looks like there's more to say, but I'm going to guess that the end of your comment, which I don't see yet, maybe it didn't pop up yet, is that the shadow side, or the other side of that, is that we have more to say than is necessarily going to be in this book. That's true. Maybe we've got some stuff to say that's going to end up in a different book. So here are some good solutions that I recommend. Let's just call them that. If you are in a blank page problem mode, meaning that you're just convinced that you can't get anything out on the page, you can't think of things, you just can't, you can't produce, then you are over relying on a mistaken idea about what the writing process is actually like. And you're or I shouldn't say over relying, you're over attached to it. And you need to sort of gently let go of the idea that the writing process is different than it really is. And you also might be over attached to the idea of inspiration. And as I said earlier, these are both kind of ego driven problems, because one of them is blaming yourself for the lack of productivity, even though you're the one who's judging what you have to offer so hard that you're not letting yourself put it down. And the other one is sort of building this citadel, this, cathedral to your personal, gift of intuition and inspiration. So the solution for the blank page, believe it or not, is to tame your ego. Stop, putting yourself down and stop building yourself up. Just be with what is. Be with what is. Whatever you've got to put on the page is what you need. You also need to rely less on this idea of intuition and more on the idea of story structure. You've got to tame your ego enough to let a little bit of writing craft inform your work. What does that feel like? Well, I'll tell you what it feels like. I don't need to feel inspired or even know what I'm going to do to sit down and work on a book. Because if I sit down and work on a book and I just come cold, I hadn't had time to think about it. Maybe I haven't worked on it in a couple of days, so I've even sort of lost my momentum. I don't even remember what I was working on. I can always pick something to do. I can just pick something. I'm like, okay, well, I can help, I can develop character. I can think about who might be a mentor figure and maybe sketch out a scene with a mentor figure. I can do deep character work and really get to know what the wound or problem that my character needs to solve might be. I can sketch outlines. I can just reach into my toolbox of writing craft and just do something. It's like if I say clean your house, you're like, what should I do? It doesn't matter. Pick something. Clean the bathroom. Empty out a junk drawer. Declutter your shoes. Just pick one small thing and do that. That's all. Just pick something. Don't make a drama out of it. Writer's block is not a thing. Just know that writing is a craft. There's just lots of little tasks to do, just like cleaning your house. Pick something. Do it for half an hour. You had a great writing day. Boom, done. Problem solved. It's your ego that prevents you from being that simple about it. So think about that. All right, the creative overwhelm problem. Let's talk about this. If you have like a party at your house and you invited 10 people and 500 people show up at the door, do you have to let them all in? You don't have to let them all in. You don't have to let them all in. How do you decide who to let in? Well, you decide. You make a choice. You make a choice. It's the same with all of your creative impulses. You are the boss of your book. Many of you have heard me say this. It's so true. You're the boss of your book. Just pick. Now, as is so often the case in life, we have to make a decision and we don't know if it's the right one, but we just decide and we let that decision move us into the future. And then if it turns out not to be a decision we love, we can change our minds. We can make a different decision. But the paralysis of indecision will teach us nothing, and it will just keep us stuck. And that is where the idea of overwhelm, I use this word overwhelm. I think it's a word that we can all relate to in maybe more than one aspect of our lives. It's very easy. Modern life is overwhelming. There's just a lot coming at us all the time. Don't let everything in without discrimination. You've got all of these ideas. Make a choice and now try. And here's what I want you to do. Instead of assuming like, all these people showed up at my party. I guess we'll have to spill over into the backyard, and I guess I'll have to order 100 pizzas now because I didn't make enough food. Like, don't build a new party to accommodate everything, because now it's going to become unwieldy. Stick to your plan. Write a story with a protagonist in a point of view that uses what you know about writing craft and story structure to deliver the goods to whom? To your reader. Think of your reader. I just want you to remember that by the time you're done revising your book, you will know it by heart. It's going to seem so obvious. Everything in it is going to seem so obvious. And you're going to be tempted to complicate it, to make things a little more mysterious, to add more layers and nuance. Your reader has never seen it before. When it's done and you hand it to your reader, they are going to read it cold. They've never have seen it before. They have to follow it the first time. They're not going to study it. They're going to read it for pleasure. And by the time they get confused because you got bored and you made everything really complicated and obscure, they're just not going to understand what's going on, and they're not going to stick with it. So what that means is that we have to struggle hard always to maintain our commitment to the reader, to err on the side of simplicity and clarity, because what feels really simple and clear to us is going to be barely coherent to the reader, right? What feels super simple to the writer, who knows the book by heart, who dreams in it, who's been working on it for 2 years, is going to be, maybe just right for the reader. So you have to err on the side of simplicity and clarity. Bring the reader, your awareness of your reader, into your process in making decisions. Make the decisions that will serve the reader best. And what that often means, and again, I want this to sound a little provocative. What it often means to make the decision that will serve the reader best is to make the conventional choice. Now, when I say conventional, I see the egos of writers out there everywhere saying, but wait a minute, aren't I supposed to be striving for originality? Shouldn't this be great literature? Shouldn't I be pushing the envelope? I want you to put your egos down a little bit. And I want you to really think about what that word conventional means. It means that it follows convention. It is able to be understood by others. Now, if we don't ever follow convention, other people can't understand what we're doing. If we decide, I know everyone speaks, English in a certain way, but I've decided that I'm going to speak backwards. I'm just going to say everything backwards because I don't want to be conventional. I want to be original. Good for you. Have a good time. No one will be able to understand what you're talking about. So, what's your goal? Why are you writing? Are you trying to communicate with someone? Are you trying to connect with with a reader, with 100 readers, with 1,000 readers, with 1,000,000 readers? This is what books do. I mean, this is really quite an undertaking that we're on when we sit down to write a book. The potential impact is really significant. And when I say make the conventional choice, what I'm saying is, if you want to communicate, think of your listener. Think of your listener. Communication is a two-way dance. It's not just you expressing your incomprehensible originality, your unconventionality in a way that doesn't work for anybody else. You got to work together on it. Now, readers are also smart, and they will delight in your cleverness. They will delight in the things that you give them that are you, that are authentic. So to be conventional is not to be imitative. It's not to traffic in cliches. It's none of those things. It's for you to do your best work, your most authentic and personal work, while also saying, and I want to do this for my reader. I want to take my reader on a journey. So think of your reader. That means you have to be the boss of your book. Now, that's the last thing I want to discuss today, because the difficulty of actually making these decisions and sticking to them in an authoritative way is real. I know how hard it can be to just say, I can't decide. Well, if not you, who? So why is it so hard to decide? There's a theory of personality. This the 5 big traits, 5 big personality traits. You can Google it. There's a lot written about it. But one of the 5 major personality traits in this theory of personality is something called openness. And it means what it sounds like. It means people are on a like on a sliding bar, you could say, on degree of openness. So that's what these traits are for. Like, these are ways that we can sort of measure people that either have a high degree of openness or a middling degree of openness or a low degree of openness. Openness, it has to do with creativity, being open to new ideas, being flexible, being receptive, right? Now, obviously, creative people have a very high degree of openness. That is a personality trait. Now, what happens when you have a high degree of openness? You are receptive by nature, and this is an artist's gift. We're great observers. We notice things. We connect the dots, right? That's an artist's eye. And we celebrate that openness. We celebrate it. This is our creative superpower. But we have to also temper it, because if we simply stay open, there is a feeling. Let me know if you relate to this. There's a feeling that there should be someone else out there making the decisions. That actually it's against our grain to close off possibilities. To say, you can come in, but you have to stay out. I didn't invite you to this party. Maybe I'll invite you to my next party, but not this one. Our natural openness makes us want to say, no, come on in. Everybody. And then when decisions have to be made, we look around for an external decider. We don't find the most proximate source of boundary setting within ourselves. And how does this manifest? Well, think about what we've talked about today. If we are a person who tends toward that blank page dilemma, we delegate, we outsource the decision-making about what to put down on the page to something outside us. We delegate it to some incorrect vision of what writing is like, or we delegate it to the bubble with the inspiration in it. We're just sitting here waiting in a state of openness to receive it. That's actually not what's happening. We're doing it, but we have to build a kind of an illusion that someone else is doing it for us to feel comfortable. Why? Because we are highly open personalities. I really want you to think about this. Now, how does this open personality trait manifest itself in the creative overwhelm problem? Obviously, we are in a receptive state. The ideas keep coming. They keep coming. And we feel like our job is to catch them all. Whose job is it to say, nope, not you, not you, not you, you? Isn't that someone else's job? And so our first instinct is not to say, oh, no, that's definitely my job. I open the door, but I'm also responsible for closing the door. We don't we don't think that's our job because we are so open in personality. And so we think that our job is, oh gosh, now I've got to create a structure that can include all of this. We keep doubling down on our openness to solve a problem that actually needs to be solved by closing the door, by setting a boundary, by making a decision. So I just want you to recognize that the same creative attributes that get us doing this work in the first place can be the like little tripwires that we stumble over when we are experiencing either this blank page problem or this creative overwhelm problem. You see, it sort of all boils back down to this open nature. So maybe now that I've given you a few like new ways to think of this, a few new images to use. Maybe now you can do the kind of self-exploration that some of you are doing already. We've already shared, and that I can already see this going on in the comments. That you can add this now to your self-exploration and just start to say, aha, I see myself doing this now. I recognize this in myself. And yet I know I celebrate my openness. I'm glad that I have that creative capacity, but I know that I am the boss of my book, and that means that I decide. The book doesn't decide. My intuition doesn't decide. My fantasy about what writing drafts is like doesn't decide. It means that I decide. And this is when you need to rely on what you know about writing. You need to rely on your writing craft, your grasp of story structure. You need to seek out the right kind of mentorship to, guide you both toward authenticity and the right relationship to conventional choices. So that's what I've got to offer today. That's my conclusion. Stop externalizing the decision-making about your book. Be the boss of it. Get to know your relationship to these seemingly opposite problems that I think we may have concluded have a lot in common. Take responsibility for it. Openness is a great virtue, but in life as well as in art, openness is balanced by the capacity to set boundaries, to make decisions, to make choices that are sometimes hard choices, and to follow through. It is certainly a journey. It's why we call it the path of the storyteller. It's not the destination of the storyteller, is it? And so we continually get to refresh and refine our choices as we learn more and grow more. So I'm going to do a last skim through the comments, see if anyone's got a particular question. Oh, Kelly, thank you so much. Kelly's having a good experience today. I'm so glad you came, Kelly. Jaron likes the idea of speaking backwards. Yes. Like there are some folks that learn to do that as a kind of a trick. Nancy's totally relating. Cynthia's relating. Terry, it's great that you came. Our other Terry, Hillary is saying, I needed to hear this yet again. Oh, I know, Hillary. I know. These are the kinds of things that we have to really think about over and over again, because we have established habits. We have ways of relating to our writing that feel very personal, honestly. And as you know, what feels familiar is not always what's authentic. It's just what's habitual. And maybe what's authentic is what's being hidden by a set of habits that we acquired, right? A set of habits, habitual ways of doing things that we acquired at some point for some reason. And if we dismantle those habits, we might actually see that our true impulses are something different. We've just gotten in the habit of approaching things a certain way. It's challenging work and brave work. I'm so proud of you, Hillary, and all of you for really being willing to think about these things and engage with them. Hey, Jaron's got an interesting tip here. He finds story ideas manageable when he can reduce them to simplest form and expand on them from there. Absolutely, right? Finding the core of something, the spine of it, is a very helpful way. That's why story structure is so useful, using a good story structure template. And I'm going to end. I love this, Kelly, so much. Being a creative bouncer. That's right. You have to appoint yourself the bouncer of your own creative nightclub. Don't let everybody in. Don't let everybody in. if you skew toward creative overwhelm, you need to be your own creative bouncer. Wonderful comments, wonderful participation today. So delighted to spend all this time with you. If you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. I would also very much appreciate a thumbs up. It just helps YouTube know that this is content that more people should see. And a final invitation, anybody here, I think most of you that I who are participating live are probably already on the mailing list. But if you're watching the replay, head over to www.pathofthestoryteller.com and get your name on the mailing list, because I have a whole other dialogue that goes on with the people on my email list. They hear from me once a week. We invite people to take a survey, get to know me better, and let me get to know your writing practice better. And also, you will be the first to get a very special offer about the next training program, the next course that I'm developing, which is going to be out very soon. Okay. Thank you all for being here today. I wish you some fruitful self-exploration, of course, and some happy writing as well, until I see you next time, which I hope will be next Wednesday. I will see you then.